Morning, guys. Hope things are going well. I hope you're staying warm through this winter weather. Today, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to give you some notes and a little video here on your trig identities. So let's start with um, your green hardback uh, sheet that we gave you after the test. Hopefully, you have written down all of your identities on your green card. Again, we have your multiplication identities, which is basically your reciprocal identities. So sine times cosecant is equal to 1. I'm not going to read through all those, so hopefully you understand those. We also have our Pythagorean identities, which is sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. And then a different form of each one of those right below the ones in the box. And again, just some different formats there that'll help you when we start simplifying these problems. 1 plus tangent squared equals secant squared, and then 1 plus cotangent squared equals cosecant squared. We then have all of our reciprocal identities, which the reciprocal identities sine theta equals 1 over cosecant theta, and then on down the line through those. And then you have your sign change identities. So those are all listed there for you. Now, what you're going to add to the back of your green card is what's on this slide right here. So the steps for simplifying your trig identities. And you're going to want to get to know these steps, uh, you know, really good as we start kind of working through this. And, to start, you need to have this green sheet out to kind of help you work through this. And I'm going to take you through a few examples from worksheet 1, and then you're going to have a chance to practice some of these. But the first thing we want to do is we want to look for some of our multiplication identities. So if we go back to our green sheet, the multiplication identities would be these ones where when we multiply them together, they give us 1. So that's what you're going to look for first. If you don't see any of those in your simplification process, then you're going to look for your Pythagorean identities. So simplifying using this middle section. Again, part of the reason we've listed these in this order, it kind of helps you go through that process. So anytime we do use one of these, then you're going to go back to the start and you're going to go right through the process. The third one is your algebra. So, we just did that little algebra worksheet yesterday, and hopefully the distributive property, FOIL, getting a common denominator, factoring the greatest common factor, those are things that you kind of got refreshed on that little algebra practice that we did yesterday. So that would be the next thing we check. Then we look to change all of our identities to either sine and cosine. Again, then the last thing would be then to repeat your steps. So this is a step-by-step process. Again, you're going to want to write this on the back of your green card so that you've got that there to look at. Now, next time I see you, I'm going to give you a sheet that goes on the inside of this that will help you to practice these identities. Okay, so what I thought I'd do today, if we go to that worksheet 1, so on worksheet 1, I'm going to just go through some of these first few, just so you can get an idea of what our process is as we go through these. So that first one, we've got cosine x times the tangent of x. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to our green card here. So the first thing we look at here is we know that we don't have any of our multiplication identities. So that would be step 1. Step 2, we're going to look for a Pythagorean identity. Well, we don't have anything that's squared in the problem, so we're not using anything with Pythagorean identity. We don't have anything algebra-wise that we can do with this. So then the next thing to do would be to change it all to sines and cosines. Well, if I go back to my sheet, I know that cosine, I'm not going to change that, that's already a cosine. But the tangent, if we look here, tangent is the same thing as sine over cosine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that. So if we go, I'm going to go ahead and go to the paper here to let you see this. So I'm going to leave the first thing as cosine x. I'm going to change tangent x to sine x over cosine x. Now, when I make that change, then you think of this as being over 1. My cosine x's are going to cancel, and then I'm just simply left with the sine of x. So there would be my simplification for number 1. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at number 2. Number 2, we've got the cosine of x plus the sine of x tangent of x. Again, first thing you want to check, do we have any of our multiplication identities? In this case, we do not. Any Pythagorean identities? We do not. We can't really do any algebra here, so we're going to go ahead and change them to sines and cosines. So if I do that, here's what I end up with. I've got cosine x plus sine x. We just did in the last one, tangent x is sine x over cosine x. Okay, now I'm ready to kind of combine some terms here. So I've got cosine x plus sine squared x over cosine x. Now you'll notice at this point, we need to get a common denominator to kind of combine our terms. So to get a common denominator here, it is cosine x. So that means I've got to multiply this by cosine x. So I get cosine squared x plus sine squared x, because this already has cosine in the denominator. If I go back to my sheet again, I'm going to go ahead now and use one of my Pythagorean identities. We know that the cosine squared x plus the sine squared x, we go back to our sheet on the green, we know that that's equal to 1. So I can now say this is 1 over the cosine of x. And we know that 1 over cosine of x, if I do my reciprocal, that's the same thing as secant x. And there would be my simplified answer for that one. Okay. I'm going to do a couple more here with you. Let's look at number 3. Number 3, we have secant x cotangent x. Okay, so again, as I go through my list, again, I don't have any of my multiplication identities. I don't have any of my Pythagorean identities. I do know that, again, I can't do any algebra. I'm going to go ahead and change them to sines and cosines. Well, I know secant x is 1 over cosine x. I know that cotangent x is cosine x over sine x. And again, I can then cancel out my cosines, so I'm left with 1 over the sine of x. And we don't want to leave any fractions, so the sine x, the reciprocal of that, is just simply cosecant x. Hopefully you're starting to kind of catch on to what we're doing with this. Let's do maybe 2 more, and then I'll leave you the remaining ones for you to try for practice. So number 4 says the sine of x times 1 plus cotangent squared x. Okay, so again, we're going to check, go back to our sheet, go through our list. Our list says we're going to look for multiplication identities. Don't have any multiplication identities. We're going to check our Pythagorean identities. Well, if we go back to our Pythagorean identities, we know that 1 plus cotangent x, and again, we're talking about cotangent squared, is equal to cosecant squared x. So I can immediately change that here as I change that. So I've got sine x times cosecant squared x. Now, from there, I can go ahead then and change my my cosecant, or I can change sine x to we can change our cosecant squared x to a 1 over sine squared x. So sine x, that's 1 over sine squared x, which if I cancel out a sine, I'm left with still 1 over sine x. And we know that 1 over sine x, we know is just simply cosecant x. Okay. Again, the thing I want to point out to you as you're working through these is these answers are on the second sheet. So you do have the ability as you're going through these to be able to check these. I'm going to do one more with you. We'll do number 5, and then you can do the remaining ones through number 13 on your own for a little bit of practice. So number 5, we've got tangent squared x over 1 plus tangent squared x. And again, the better you get to know your identities, the easier these problems are going to become. So on this one, again, the first thing that looks like on my list is my Pythagorean identities. The tangent squared x on the top isn't going to change. On the bottom, 1 plus tangent squared we know is secant squared x. Okay, now on the top, if we change these to sines and cosines, the tangent squared we know is sine squared x over cosine squared x. And we know that secant is 1 over cosine squared x. So again, we've created here now kind of a complex fraction. Notice that both of the denominators are cosine squared x. So all I'm going to do then is multiply the top and the bottom by cosine squared x, which is really like multiplying by just simply 1. Those are going to cancel, and I'm just simply left with a sine squared x. And there's nothing I can do with that. So that's going to be my answer for number 5. Okay, so I hope that's enough examples for you as you kind of continue to move through. Again, for your Wednesday assignment here on this e-learning day, I want you to try and complete numbers 6 through 13 on the worksheet 1. Also, I've posted the answers to the algebra activity that you did yesterday. So if there's anything on this, guys, that you have questions about, don't hesitate to send me an email. Again, my office hours tomorrow, Wednesday, or will be from 9 to 11 in the morning. So that's the best time probably to reach me. But again, I will get back with you at any point. Just send me a email, and I'll be glad to get with you. So I hope this helps you, and hopefully you have a warm day, and hopefully we'll get back into class and see you soon.